I got in the car the other day, and Jasper is like, "Hold on, give me your phone. Let me pick a song." And we're driving, and then he put on the song "Your Love" by, is it Left Field or Outfield? Outfield.
Let your love open the door. That one? That's the Who.
No. Oh, no. Your Love by Outfield.
Is it from 1986? Is that what you're getting at here?
Yes, it is. But he knew it from like a TikTok meme or something.
Two college radio DJs during the 90s, hosts Keith and Steve, helped expose bands like Nirvana, Pavement, and PJ Harvey. They were in the shows, interviewed musicians, and reviewed albums for various zines and papers. They worked security at concerts, and once even did load-in for Fish. Now they're dads. Whether you want to explore lesser-known music or take a trip down memory lane, tune into the New Dad Rock. Join hosts Keith and Steve as they navigate the ages together, sharing their love of music across various eras and genres. Always well-intentioned, often well-informed, seldom boring. The New Dad Rock will expand your mind.
So 1986, the land of Miami Vice.
Oh my God, do you know John Johnson had an album come out that year?
He did.
Dude, I actually had the cassette tape. Okay, I'm sorry. My mom had the cassette tape. I don't think it was that bad. I don't think it was that good.
Looking for a heartbeat.
I don't think he embarrassed himself. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it actually sounds like that.
Mine might have been better.
But he looked better in a linen suit and those, sockless Crocs.
Yeah, I think that was the problem. All that fluff, all the cocaine, all that style, all the lack of substance.
Abuse.
Yeah. Our ears were abused in 1986, that's for sure.
Have you heard about Shaboozey?
What is Shaboozey?
He's a country, I guess country. He's a country singer.
Okay, so I think you know the answer to that question, and it's no.
Okay, I'm sorry. Shaboozey is an artist. He's put out a couple albums, and he was actually just featured on two of Beyonce's songs on her country album. You know who Shaboozey is?
I still don't. I understand the language that you're speaking, but none of this makes any sense to me.
So, anyway, Shaboozey, he was on two tracks by Beyonce off her country album. They're great. Shaboozey's been around a while, so he's working it. He's working hard, right? But finally, he puts out an album after this Beyonce album. I assume it's out afterwards, just because of the way I found it, but I think so. It's called Where I've Been Isn't Where I'm Going. And it is awesome. It's possibly, I'm going to put it out there, album of the year, but definitely album of the summer. And, I've said that about, I think, Beyonce's previous last album. I said that about The Weeknd's album. Oh, Travis Scott was last year's album for me. But anyway, Where I've Been Isn't Where I'm Going. Tracks 2 through 6 are amazing. He has a very popular song called Tipsy, which is like on TikTok everywhere. DJs were mixing his song at Coachella, and he happened to be in the audience, and he runs up and starts singing it halfway through. Like, you gotta check out Shaboozey.
Okay. I will give it a listen. And while we're talking about some new music, an artist that we covered a couple seasons ago was Mdou Moctar. Funeral for Justice is his latest album that came out back in May. Guitar-based guy from Niger, really rocking out, shredding. If you like guitar rock, which I don't know if Shaboozey is or not.
It's not.
Mdou Moctar will scratch that itch for you.
He's putting out almost as many albums as King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. Like, it's one a year at least.
He's been putting out one a year, one every 18 months or so. But yeah, King Gizzard is putting out a album in August, I want to say.
Yep.
Which is only their first this year.
Might be the only this year. Oh, I had someone over visiting my house, and we're sitting by the pool, and we're passing the phone back and forth, and he put on the first Dinosaur Jr. album. I think it's 83. And I thought it was like a Nirvana B-sides album for a while. I didn't realize that Dinosaur Jr. is basically proto-Nirvana.
Yeah, there was not a lot of newness about Nirvana, but they had pulled together a lot of strains.
Mm-hmm.
They synthesized it and made it palatable in a 2-minute form, which was a lot like what was going on in 1986. So welcome to the New Dad Rock.
I'm Keith.
Episode 86. He's Keith, I'm Steve, and we're talking about 1986. And we are in a land of confusion in 1986. And let me tell you what I mean by that.
I'm 13 hitting puberty. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
wrong podcast?
Yeah, well, you're definitely confused, and I'm surely I was confused as well. But I think music was very confused. If you look at what was popular, it is really crappy.
Maybe. I don't know about that. I mean, the one thing about 86, 87, you're right. It's the era of the pop star. It's not the era of the rock star. Like, the only thing saving the mid-80s is Prince.
And I think in 1986, Peter Gabriel, So, that was pretty huge across the board. But I mean, 1986, I mean, we all know if you're a regular listener of the show that I listened to a lot of metal in the mid 80s, and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest released their definitely Iron Maiden's worst album in the 80s, even though they're trying to tour it now. And Judas Priest Turbo, which was, you know, they really amped up the synths. I think a lot of the pastels of Miami Vice, the synthesizers, it just went to everyone's head, you know, possibly the drug of choice. You know, the 5 o'clock shadow. This was 1986.
I think you're selling 86 a little short. It was all over the place. I'll give you that. I mean...
Okay, so let me run down a few of the popular hits from 1986 and tell me this isn't a load of crap.
Okay.
Graceland by Paul Simon.
Dude.
Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi.
Wait, hold on. Wait. You can't go this fast. Go back to Graceland. It had You Can Call Me Al on it, which had Chevy Chase in the video. That was a terrific video.
That was a terrible song. Addicted to Love. Okay, Kiss, Prince and the Revolution. I'll give you that. That was a cool song.
Wait, did you go to talk about the greatest karaoke album of all time?
Living on a Prayer?
Oh, see,
Bon
you know,
Jovi?
yes.
Slippery When Wet?
Dude, and that has my go-to karaoke songs.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Dude, but girls loved it.
Cameo, West End Girls. All right, there's a few good songs. But then you have the yacht rock of Danger Zone, Higher Love by Steve Winwood. These are just terrible, terrible songs.
No, hold on. I mean,
There's got to be an face about touch.
No. Dude, you're missing 86 can be summed up by one album. Don Johnson's Heartbeat.
Countdown. What?
Don Johnson put out his album Heartbeat that year.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm telling you. 86 is crap. And by 86 being crap, I think it allowed, and I think we talked about it last week with our special guest, Brian. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
But we talked about how all the genres were starting to become the genres and harden the lines. So I think in 1986 you had, you know, the second tier or the proliferation in all of these different genres that were coming out.
I don't know,
Does
man.
that make sense?
It does. I get what you're saying, but okay, hold on. Let's be very specific here. License to Ill by the Beastie Boys came out in 1986.
Right.
The first white boy rap album, right?
Pretty much. And then was it also 1986 that you had Walk This Way?
It is, with Run DMC.
Run DMC and Aerosmith.
Yeah. Isn't 1986 also the year when you had Two Live Crew is what we are? Remember Two Live Crew?
I do remember Two Live Crew. So all of these things signaled that rap was allowed in the mainstream. So that opening of such crappy music in 1986 in the pop scene opened it up for rap to flourish. It opened up for thrash metal to flourish. Like the Big Four had already established themselves and had an album or two, but now you have not only two all-time classics, you have Master of Puppets and Rain and Blood came out in 1986, along with P. Sells But Who's Buying. But you also now have the second tier. You have the Testaments and you have the Overkill and you have all the proliferation of the metal genre. You have the same thing in hair metal. Like at first it was just Motley Crue and Rat, but now you have the Cinderellas and you have the Skid Rows, and all of these bands are starting to take over. So you have the second level. Like, you know, you had the Cure and the Smiths, and now you're having, you know, Gene Loves Jezebel, and all of these branches are thickening up and becoming limbs, and all of those limbs are teetering out into the branches.
Okay. I didn't know we were growing a forest here. But speaking of a forest, The Cure's first compilation album came out that year, Standing on the Beach, which I think every alternative, is that what it was called? New Wave fan had back in the 80s, right? Standing on the Beach was probably my first Cure album.
Yeah. It was also called Staring at the Sea. Like, there was two variations of it. It was the difference between the vinyl and the CD and the cassette.
Oh, that's cool. I respect that. Hey, what do the Queen and Cliff Burton have in common?
Queen, as in the Queen of England?
Yeah.
And Cliff Burton of Metallica?
In 1986.
They visited Sweden?
They're both dead. The Queen is Dead by the Smiths comes out in 1986, and a tour bus carrying the heavy metal band Metallica crashes in Sweden, killing their influential bassist Cliff Burton.
Dude, that's fucked up. We're going to have to edit that out, because that's fucking evil.
What?
That was the end of Metallica. I am one of those people that said Metallica died when Cliff Burton died.
Really?
And there are a lot of us.
Yeah, I didn't kill him. And also, the Queen didn't really die. It was just the name of the Smiths albums. But what really did die was the Smiths, because they played their last gig in December of 1986 at the Brixton Academy.
Well, there you have it. So that's how old New Wave was, that the originating bands were dying off.
Yeah, and some new ones were coming online. Wonderland by Erasure came out. One of my favorite albums. And I might have actually... Okay, 86 might be the year when I start listening to bands that then I'm looking forward to their next album, which is actually a different world. Like having something that's contemporary with you versus things that are only backwards. Like all the Beatles albums were done by then. You know what I mean? All the Doors albums.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're growing with bands and they're at their creative peak.
Well,
and you're cognizant of them because you're old enough to be cognizant of them.
Yeah. Well, so that was actually part of my sadness, though, is apparently the next album isn't always the better album. I mean, in Erasure's case, it was, but Weird Al, Polka Party came out in 1986, and that was not a better album than Eat It.
Or in 3D, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that exact same story, and one to show you the devotion to it. I walked to the mall, which was a little over 2 miles away from my house. Mm-hmm. So it's a solid half-hour walk when you're 14, 15 years old. And I went and bought Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. Actually, no, I take it back. I rode my bike, and it was more than 2 miles. It might have been 5 miles.
Nice.
The moral of the story is I rode my bike, and that's how excited I was to go get this cassette, Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. And it has Wasted Years on it, but honestly, it's the worst album of the 80s, in my view. It's a departure from their sound, and this is coming off the heels of Live After Death, their greatest live album, greatest hits live package from their highlights of all their first 5 albums, and Power Slave had just come out the year before that. So, like you said, I'm in peak fandom, and I'm so excited for Somewhere in Time to come out that I ride my bike to the mall, and I come home, and I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, it's sad when you realize that. Before you do back catalogs and, you know, you're like, oh, cool, there's more and more music, but then all of a sudden, a new thing comes out, and it kind of messes it up. I mean, I guess this happened with authors, too. Like Vonnegut, for instance. Was he already dead by the time we were in college when I got into him, right? Maybe not, but had he written anything else? But
no, he continued to write through the early 2000s. And
really?
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder which books those were. Oh, wait, is Galapagos one of them? Galapagos.
No, Timequake. Galapagos was like 1990. Timequake was a later one, maybe around 97, 98. And then he had a couple other ones come out, essay compilations, that sort of thing. But yeah, 86. Back to your point.
Okay. There's some things though that were really cool in '86, and one is the Pill album that came out that year, Public Image Limited. I think that was the album called Album, and I think the cassette was called Cassette, or Tape. Like it was just a blue and white cover, and they had a song called "This Is Not a Love Song." It was very well, I was gonna say punk, but that's not right. Avant-garde or plain. It was this weird juxtaposition of like. The album was called.
So
Album.
Is that a compilation? Because This Is Not a Love Song came out on an earlier album of theirs, so this might be a compilation.
Or I'm totally messing it up, and that's one of my favorite songs of theirs.
Or you just know that song. Yeah. So where there's an opening, there's an opportunity for new things. So Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Dio and all of those first tier heavy metal that I listened to were kind of fading out, and they weren't so cool anymore. But Metallica and Master of Puppets, that's an album. I knew Ride the Lightning, so when Master of Puppets came out, talk about being taken aback and going into the next stratosphere. So that was exciting, and that led me down the road to Anthrax and Slayer and Megadeth and Overkill. Overkill Taking Over, what a great album as well. From '86. So I think maybe I'm starting to change my view on how bad 1986 was. Is that pop music was horrible in 1986. So therefore, heavy metal became thrash metal. You're talking about some of the alternative scene really breaking out and talking about bands maturing. U2, incidentally, had no album out in 1986. And I think that... that's notable, and I think we might put a pin on that.
Well, I was thinking about how you were talking about your trees and your limbs and your branches and your trunk, and the lines were beginning to harden. And I kind of see what you're saying, where like when something went left, something went right. When something zigged, something went zag. And it's that you actually have these very diverse streams of music occurring, because I've mentioned a bunch of the new wave bands. You've mentioned the hair and thrash metal bands. There's other stuff going on that you and I aren't listening to. Like Janet Jackson Control came out. Wasn't that like the biggest album of the year that year?
I don't know.
Lyle Lovett's.
This is the new dad rock, man. Janet Jackson is not rock. Lyle Lovett, state your case. Maybe Lyle Lovett could be rock.
No, I'm just the dad side maybe. I just meant his debut album came out that year. I was just trying to show the diversity of music is still out there.
Yeah,
it's just. I mean, you're right. It's probably not in the tree of the new dad rock, but it is what's happening around it. Like I wouldn't say Two Live Crew is new dad rock.
No, not at all. But one I will say, and this album might have been album of the year, was Peter Gabriel's So. This album was everywhere, and it united the classic rock guys that liked Peter Gabriel from Genesis. It had a little bit of the new wave flavor to it. It was definitely artsy, so it fit in the alternative thing. It was weird, so that attracted some of the more freakishly minded people, and the videos are really cool. So even people like me who didn't really necessarily listen to that music, but I'm, sucked in by gory album covers. I'm like, oh, this is a cool video, like tantalize my rods and cones. And so Peter Gabriel was everywhere. He was ubiquitous. And I think the other thing that was ubiquitous in '86 was the Police. So the Police had broken up at this point, or there was no hope of them touring again or working together again. Sting had gone off and done his solo albums, but they put out their compilation, the Police singles, and it was just amazing.
Oh, that was one of my Columbia records, wasn't it?
I'm sure it was everyone's, but that was one of the albums of that era. The same as, like you said, Columbia House Legend by Bob Marley.
Hey, I have to say, this year, 1986, is one of the first years where we probably had multiple episodes about it, earlier episodes. For instance, episode 43 was called So, Peter Gabriel. And I know we talked about, Live After Death, we had episode 38 was called Iron Maiden Live After Dark. We had episode 36, our live albums dead, which I'm sure we touched on, and episode 37 was top 10 albums by the Big Four. Were any of the top 10 albums by the Big Four come out in 1986?
Yeah, the number one on the list, Master of Puppets, came out. I Know Rain and Blood was top 4, and Peace Sells was up there as well. So, yeah, 3 of the top 10 came out that year. And this is so funny. I'm trying to look up the Police Greatest Hits album that everybody had in 86, and
it's not from 86?
No, they have a different one on Apple Music, and it looks like it's all the same songs. It's like Roxanne, Can't Stand Losing You, So Lonely, Message in a Bottle, Walking on the Moon, blah, blah, blah. You know, so many great songs. They were one of those bands from the 80s that every album had 3 or 4 awesome classic songs. Pat Benatar was another one of that era, but not a lot of the bands could go that deep.
Wow. Speaking of Pat Benatar, had some guests over this weekend. We're hanging out by the pool, and I'm like, hey, tonight's brought to you by 1986. I put on a 1986 playlist. And then the next night they're still here, and I go, tonight's brought to you by 1987. 1987 playlist. And the New Dad Rock, obviously. But then we're playing all these music, and they're like, put on some Pat Benatar. And we played 3 or 4 Pat Benatar songs, and they're just so good.
Yeah, so she is another one that had all those hits in the early 80s.
Couple things I still listen to from 1986. Albums I love, but I did not hear them in 1986. But they're probably among my favorite albums from 1986. One is Black Celebration by Depeche Mode. Terrific album.
So when did you start listening to Depeche Mode then? Because I know that's one of your all-time favorite bands.
Dude, when did Catching Up with Depeche Mode come out? I guess I'm supposed to know that because I'm one of the hosts.
I don't know. Is it after like Violator or before Violator?
No, it's way before that. It's 1985. Okay, so Black Celebration. So here's the thing, though. I probably bought it in like 88, 89, right? We're still in the era of me not buying music in real time. Mm-hmm. So Black Celebration is one of my favorite albums by them, but the first album I was into by Depeche Mode was Catching Up with Depeche Mode, which was 1985. But again, probably didn't get it until 87, 88. And because Music for the Masses was my first concert. So, great album. Depeche Mode's owning it right now. And the only way you even knew anything about them was by those, like, teeny magazines.
Yeah.
Like, Teen Beat. Is that one? I don't remember.
Tiger Beat, I feel like.
Ooh, that sounds good. I
used to read Hit Parader and Circus were the good ones for the more hard rock metal bands. Like Dokken.
Yeah, I remember I had to go to my friends' houses, and they're the ones with the magazines.
Yeah,
like the one girl in town who skateboarded. She lived over on Greatwater. Her name was Jen, and she was the cool girl, but she had all the cool magazines. But yeah, that's how you know about Depeche Mode or whatever. And then another album that I loved from that era is REM, Life's Rich Pageant. A band that I didn't really listen to until Document, though. And then going back to albums you look forward to, Green came out after Document. That was an album I was looking forward to. And, and it was great, so I was really happy. But yeah, so what I still listen to from 86, Depeche Mode, Black Celebration, REM, Life's Rich Pageant, Wonderland by Erasure a bit. I can't really say The Cure, Standing on the Beach, because that's really all their other albums, which I do listen to.
Yeah. So for me, I guess occasionally I'll still listen to Master of Puppets. I just have heard it so many times, and the same with Rain and Blood. Taking Over is if you're into the thrash metal by Overkill. If you don't know that one, check it out. But I have a hard time going back to 86 because even the music I liked there are so few that I liked it's overplayed or just not as good.
Yeah, I agree. The mid 80s are definitely a low point right now.
Thanks, gang, for listening to 1986 with us, which isn't as bad as I'm claiming it is. It's not like 1978, the other year from our last season when we were going through the 70s. There's always one year that you're like, eh. And despite some great albums, and we named a number of them.
You did.
Some all-time classics even. It just leaves a funny taste in my mouth.
Oh, you ate one too?
Oh, with that note, I think I have to sign off and say this is Steve for your The New Dad.
Dad Rock. Later.
Yes. See you next time.